Hello, everyone, and welcome back to season 5 of the Financial Fofu podcast. Welcome back, Sarah.
Thank you. You sound a little bit flat there. I wasn't sure. How's life?
I was trying to sound happy. Well, clearly that didn't work.
Wow, we might have to work on that, Trude. Yes, it is
Still
season
January.
5.
I'm still getting back into the
This
swing.
is true. But you had all of December off, so I don't know what your issue is. Maybe that
Well,
is
I had
the
half
issue.
of January off as well, so
Yeah, it's getting back into the roll of things. So we are back at episode 1 of a new season. Feels like forever since we launched a new season. Probably has been.
It does actually feel like forever. I think it's probably been 6 months since we...
Yeah.
So
we're changing things up a little bit this year. Our podcast has obviously grown. Like, we're at 8,000 listens and exponentially grows with each new drop we release. We've been running some events. Our website is up and running. It's got some blogs on it, some resources. So this little potty is growing quite fast, and we're very proud of it. So thank you for tuning in and listening to us. If you've been one of our original listeners, we thank you just a little bit more. We'd love for all of you to leave a review if you could as well, just in whatever podcast app you use. It just helps other people find us as well, which is fantastic. Spotify seems to be our main platform though, so that's kind of cool too. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you. Today's episode, we are talking about inefficiencies in your business and, well, them draining your profit.
Yeah. And look, even if you're sitting there saying, well, my business is pretty inefficient, I bet you there's probably still at least one thing that you could be doing better.
Yeah, see, efficiencies in business is such an interesting thing, because even if you've spent loads of time getting your systems and processes right, things change, people change, your customers change, and just that one little thing off could throw out the rest of your entire process.
Yeah, exactly right. So
I had a client yesterday that was saying to me, they were waiting on someone else in their supply chain to do something, and they were behind every month, and as a result of them being behind, it threw everything else out. And that was just a perfect example of an inefficiency that technically is outside of their control, but in reality they're the one paying the supplier, so change your terms on which you operate so that you could get back on top of that. And she's like, that's exactly what we're going to have to do.
Yeah. So let's start with, what do we actually mean by inefficiencies?
What do you mean when you say it? I know what I mean.
I'm talking about things that are being done in a way that's taking more effort than it really should be in order to achieve a certain goal in your business. And maybe you're taking more time than it should, or more money than it should, in order to achieve the exact same goal.
So mine's pretty similar. I suppose I would add perhaps your mindset around how you're approaching it is actually the inefficiency, rather than what you're trying to do or achieve. And sometimes you've got to get out of your own way as well and get someone that can see the wood through the trees to help you get on top of it. So I'm not adverse to having someone else come in and have a look at your business systems and processes and see if you can do anything better or faster or
and look,
more
to be
efficient.
honest, it's probably easier to have somebody else come and look, because as you say, sometimes when you're so in it yourself, you can't see the wood for the trees. And whereas a third party can sometimes come in and very quickly see some of the things that you could be doing in a better way.
I suppose the important thing to look at here is it's time, right? Time is the main one. Most business owners say to me all the time, I just don't have time for that. I can't find the time. And then it's money, right? So you sometimes have to decide what's more important. If you don't have the time and it's worth you getting someone else in to do it, maybe consider the time cost analysis. If you keep doing your job and you keep going out on site or consulting and billing your billable hours, is that a better use of your time to return revenue and pay somebody else to do the things that you need to do on top of it? Or is time not the actual issue and that's the excuse that you're using so that you don't actually get the job done?
I actually have a great example of that. I was speaking to a client late last year, and they were tossing up whether they implemented a new software, but she was concerned about the cost of it. And I said to her, well, how many hours a week would it save you to have this software in place? And it was 4 or 5 hours. And I said, well, how much would you be able to bill a client for those 4 or 5 hours? And the cost of billing the client was a lot more than what it was going to cost her to purchase the software. So I said, well, to me, that's an easy
Were we
decision.
talking to the same client last week? It's a very similar conversation I had with somebody else.
To me, that's an easy decision because you could be spending that 4 or 5 hours doing client work and earning more money from that and saving yourself, which for her was an administrative software, which is not what she wants to be spending her time doing. So to me, it was a no-brainer. Right. And so she ended up implementing the software a lot sooner than originally planned.
It's a common issue though, right? So, and I think sometimes as business owners, we are the problem. Like we get in our own way because we want to control the process, and our success has come from us controlling the process. But there comes a point where you have to deviate from what has potentially worked to get you where you are if you actually want to move forward and be more efficient and grow or scale, or even if that's not scale up and it's scale down, sometimes we have to have a look at how we're going about business and the outcomes that come as a result of our choices and our decisions, and how that impacts inefficiency. Because if we're not on top of the inefficiencies because we are the inefficiency, it makes it very difficult to then recognize that we need assistance or things need to change. So one thing I would suggest is if you do have a team, is ask them, what do you think we can do better? Where do we waste a lot of time? Is there double handling anywhere? That's the first one. That's the easiest thing to fix when we look at inefficiencies. So inefficiencies has obviously different meanings, as we've kind of talked about already. Most often you'll find in business that we're talking about mainly things to do with your systems and processes, how you operate, how you systemize, how you address both internal processes and external processes. So your customer journey with your client. So there's two sides to it, the internal business stuff and then the external experience that people have when they deal with you as a business.
Yeah. But a couple of the other ways that this often comes up is ineffective communication. If you're not communicating either with your team or your clients in a way that is effective so that people actually understand what you're trying to say or achieve.
Yeah.
Or perhaps it's even the method. Are you using email when you really should just be picking up the phone and having a phone conversation to get that quicker?
It's a common one, isn't it?
Return. I see that one all the time.
Are we having the same conversation?
Or sometimes
you pick up the phone and say that. Yeah.
It's just quicker. Let's just have a quick conversation because it's going to get us to where we need to be a lot quicker than this backwards and forwards. And I've had a client just say it the other day as well, can I just ring you because otherwise we're going to have 10 emails backwards and forwards on this. Of course you can.
And it's the time taken to write the emails as well and then digest the content that's in the written email. And have I understood what she's written? And do I interpret the words the way Trudi means them?
Yep.
Can we just have a phone call? I rang you yesterday for the same reason. You sent me something on Teams and I was like, no, I'm ringing you. Because it would have been back and forth for ages and you answered my question in literally 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Probably.
And then the other one that I'm finding with a lot of clients that's ineffective communication is that their customers can contact them on about 10 different platforms. Yeah. So they're having to check not just their email and their phone, but also WhatsApp and Messenger and Instagram Messenger and Teams and whatever other platforms they have. And that's also not ineffective. Yes, have multiple channels for your customers to contact you, but you don't need 10 of them. Try and narrow that down to just a couple so that it can make your communication methods a lot more efficient in terms of responding to your clients and being able to trace.
But again, that requires you to communicate that with your customer base as well, so that they know that. There's a little bit of a story behind what Trudy's saying right now for her own personal experience. And it's the same thing though, right? If you've got a method that you prefer people to communicate with you, let them know that. Yeah. Don't just assume that they will know. Anyway, like Trudi prefers emails. That is how she is. She prefers emails.
Or the phone.
Or the phone call, right? So they're the two options that she prefers. And so Trudi now has to update her website to say that.
And even with ourselves, even between the two of us, we would often communicate business-related stuff on various methods. And I eventually said, we're both on Teams. Let's just connect our teams so that we can sort of try and channel our conversations to the one place, which then makes it easier to trace back if I need to check something that we're speaking.
Sometimes.
When I remember how to use the search function.
Yeah, well, right. All of these things are examples of how inefficiencies in your business take up your time, and time equals money, and money, if it's done right, equals profit. And ultimately, that's what we want you all to be, is more profitable business owners with more effective outcomes to help you achieve your goals. So how does inefficiency decrease or impact on your profit, Trudi?
Well, all of these things that we've spoken about so far is really about you spending more time on things than you necessarily need to be. So if you're spending time on chasing communication tasks or chasing inefficient systems and spending more time on admin than you need to be, then you're not spending time on making sales to your customers or providing services to your customers and earning the actual income.
Would it be fair to say that this potentially is an operational expense, a fixed expense, if we look at our words from break even and how to quote for profit, that if you're increasing your operational expenses, because they're the ones that usually get away from you, like you can't get them down, the fastest way to save money is to reduce your operational expenses. This is a perfect example of an operational expense that is costing you from your bottom dollar.
And it might be your own time, or it might be that you're having to pay a staff member to do these extra things, or a staff member that you don't, if you actually sat down and refined your processes, maybe you don't need that extra staff member because you could be doing things, and that's all cost. And sometimes that can be quite
It's funny. I had a client recently that lives regionally and was driving daily to pick up some supplies rather than get them delivered because the delivery was expensive. And they hadn't had time to speak with a local supplier, hadn't had time to speak to a local supplier. And I say that again because time is everything, right? So the hour that you're spending driving, the 45 minutes in the shop and then the hour back every day is 3 hours out of your day. And they hadn't costed the time versus delivery cost. So like if they had paid for the delivery, sure, it would have been more expensive than if they'd bought it themselves at the shop that they wanted to go to. But then they hadn't included their hours in the cost of going and getting that goods. And they were already short time because they were short staff. And so if you then added that up across 5 or say 6 days, you're looking at 18 hours of time that wasn't actually accounted for effectively because time is money, and their wage should have actually been a cost to the business because their wage, because they have the business knowledge, is actually more valuable than if they'd got someone from Fiverr to go and do that rather than even just getting it delivered. So it's really interesting how it impacts everything.
Yeah, and so they could have spent that 18 hours actually serving their customers or their clients or helping to support their staff or training or lots of other things that would have been
hiring new staff
to the business.
And hiring new staff, finding local suppliers that could actually deliver for a reasonable price. Like there's a billion other things that business owner had as a list of things that they needed to do. And this was not a great use of their time. And it was a serious inefficiency that was not only impacting profit, it was leading that business owner to burnout as well. And that's another thing to be really important to consider as a business owner. Of all the different things you do, how many of them are actually necessary? How many of them do you do because that's what you've always done? How many of them do you do because you want to be in control? And that's another big issue for a lot of business owners. And how many of them do you do just because you haven't thought there's a better way, right? So
exactly right.
When we look at that and the impact on profit, you will find that it's quite significant. And if you can shave your efficiencies down, your profit goes up. It's that simple.
Yep. And not only profit goes up, potentially you suddenly have that time that you think that you don't have that you can be spending either on your business or having a life.
Personal life. Yeah, having a life. Isn't that the point, right? We don't live to work, we work to live. Let's get back to the actual meaning of this.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's actually funny because when we talk about the time argument, someone said to me recently, Sarah, so you probably don't have time to do this, but this is what I need from you. Can you fit it in this? I was like, yeah, I actually don't have this issue, Dan. His name was Dan. And I was like, and he's like, what? And I was like, I built my business life to work around my personal life, and I take time when I need it. And I had the same conversation with somebody else earlier in the week when he was like, oh, I'm back from holidays. January is hard to get over. And I was like, oh, yeah. And he's like, did you take time off? And I was like, not really. He's like, but won't you burn out? And I was like, no, because I built my life where I could live it without having to escape it on a holiday all the time.
Yeah.
So it's what I'm...
You had some slow down time.
I do take time off. Yeah. Yes, I do. But the point is that I don't have to.
No.
Right? As in, I don't have to schedule it in or I will burn out. I did that 4 years ago. Stop doing that anymore, right? Change the whole way I do business. So, I mean, this is another example of the inefficiency of being inefficient is actually an inefficiency in itself. And I deliberately said it like that to demonstrate how ridiculous it is, because you not recognizing the inefficiencies in your business is, number one, the biggest cause that you'll have to burn out yourself and potentially your staff too.
So I guess the big question then is, how do we actually identify those inefficiencies?
Yeah.
Which is a good one.
Exactly. And so identification.
Okay, you go.
Well, I was going to say identification comes for a couple of different ways. Often, the first way that you find it is in a simple assessment of your profit and loss, usually done for tax planning. Is to go through and have a look at what you're spending your money on, and then are those systems and processes needed? If they are yes and then no answers, what can replace what's already there to be not only efficient from a time point of view, but also a financial point of view?
Yep.
That's where I start.
That's definitely a great way to do it, and it also can help you narrow down which expenses is actually you're able to move a little bit, because I did a review with a client the other day, and really the only expense that had room for movement was her wages costs. So therefore it was, okay, well, what can we do so that we don't need as many people? And that very simplified the question for her down to, well, that's what we need to look at, that aspect of it, rather than the other things.
It's a straight up answer, right?
In terms of what she was spending on them. So that really gave focus. After the P&L, I've had another client that is currently looking at their processes at the moment, and I've spoken to him about basically stepping out every single little thing that he does in a day.
Yeah, and actually writing his processes down.
Writing down what I'm doing. And not just at a big picture level, but literally at a level of, I changed a client's address in my system.
Every single thing.
I sent out a bill. I had a phone call with a client about what was the topic, and then going through that list and literally saying, well, I do need to do these things, but these bunch of things, I don't actually need to be doing this myself. So is there either another person or another system that can take over the role of
we are talking to the same clients with the same conversations at the moment by the sounds of it.
We obviously just work
the same conversation with the client. Yeah, well, the same thing was like, they said to them, like, I want to outsource because I'm so busy, but I don't know how to outsource because it never works out for me. And I was like, have you written down every single thing you do so you know what you can actually outsource? Otherwise, you're being completely inefficient and making poor business financial decisions when you're paying for someone to come on, but they're not giving them the work or the control to do the job that you've employed them to do or engaged them to do. So, same sort of thing is coming around to, do you know exactly what you do in your business every day? Is it necessary? Or is there another way, faster, better, cheaper to do it?
Yeah. And then I guess the other option is one that you've already mentioned, is speaking to your staff. I've worked in a business before where we had a stupid things program. And so you were able to nominate what are some of the stupid things that we do in our business that could be done in a better way, or don't even need to be done at all, or could be improved how we do them. Your staff often have a lot of really good insights into how things could be done in a better way. They're just waiting for you to give them that autonomy to suggest
opportunity.
Them.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you notice significant change after taking part in that program?
Well, it's a very large organisation, so some of the things weren't relevant to me, but there definitely were changes that came out of that program, and they took a lot of things on board. So it was worthwhile.
Look, inefficiencies is one of the major drivers of change management. If you've ever heard the term change management and don't know what it means, like, it specifically is talking to changing the way you think, feel, and act within the business to achieve more efficiency, which means more profit. That's why large organizations do it, because they're looking for ways to save money. And also, save their staff from high workloads. Or a lot of organizations, especially post-COVID, they've got staff loads that dropped during COVID that haven't returned to full strength from an affordability point of view, but the staff are still doing the work of 1 to 2 people to 3 people, depending on the organization. And so efficiencies, again, if that's you guys listening or watching, like, that could potentially be a way that we can save the staff load as well, is by finding the efficiencies within the business model that you've got. So,
and look, technology can't solve everything, but if you are working off outdated systems, then technology is a really easy one to have a look at. What systems are you using? What systems are you using? What systems could you be using? Do you have 10 software subscriptions that really could be rolled into 5? And then things would be done in a better way because they talk to each other better and they operate in a better way. So technology is a really good one to look at.
But you have to take the time to learn the tech. It's no point in embracing and engaging a tech piece or a system and process if you don't know how to use it.
And potentially spend the money to have it implemented properly.
Yeah, and that's a bugbear because no one wants to spend the money. But sometimes it's actually the fastest thing you can do. And in some instances with some organizations, like you could be paying 50, 60K minimum for a decent tech implementation, but it may save you 3 staff. And the 3 staff means that you get the time back of not having to manage the staff. The overheads are significantly lower, and not just the like the pay cycle that's required from an employment point of view, but if you've got an office, maybe you don't need an office of that size. Like maybe you don't need cars on the road. Like there's a whole range of flow-on effects that come from having a look at efficiencies in your business.
Maybe the staff that are remaining are a lot happier because they've got better systems in place to use rather than trying to wrangle with outdated technology. That's
right. And the communication then is effective.
Yes.
So there's all these wins that come from this. I suppose one of the last sort of things that is an impact as a result of inefficiencies, which is an inefficiency in itself, is slow decision making.
Yes.
Like it has this flow-on effect that if you're already inefficient, you can't make a good decision because you don't actually know. You can't put your finger on the pulse of what's going on in your business. So therefore you can't make a quick decision because as a business owner, you're unsure and you don't want to screw up the decision. So it kind of like is an inseparate cycle that you want to break as a decision owner because it creates a higher operational cost because you're slow in making those decisions.
And I think slow decision making actually has a really clear impact on your profit as well because it can mean that you don't get the job because you took too long to quote for it. Or you don't get the really good interest rate on the loan because you took too long to accept the fact that you needed the loan or you waited too long to go and get that particular finance and therefore you're in a worse...
Or you missed the equipment. The equipment might have sold. Like there are all these flow-on effects, as you're saying. Which means you missed the contract that you needed the equipment for. And when we've got a supply issue in this country on equipment still, like all of those things have a serious impact.
You miss the premium employee and then have to go for your second choice. There's lots of really good examples of that.
Business owner mindset is really key. And this is a key component of a business owner mindset is having a great position on ensuring that you're constantly checking to see if you're efficient within everything that you do within the business. And I know that seems like a lot to take on at any one time, but the idea is that it's on autopilot, that you just naturally do it as part of your standard assessment process. And when you look at a job, a project, or a delivery that you're about to do that you're already assessing from the get-go, sort of filtering through those different categories of a business owner mindset to ensure that you're covering them off to get the best outcomes.
So Sarah, wrap it up for us. If our listeners take away 3 things from this episode, what would you want them to take away?
I kind of feel in my head like we've been rambling and it's been completely inefficient, but we haven't. We have a schedule that we work to, guys. But I think the reality is that inefficiencies look so different for different people, and how you approach those inefficiencies will ultimately come down to what you feel comfortable with. So perhaps you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to get some assistance. You need to pay some money to get somebody in to take a short look at your business and say, from a very brief look with the information you've given me, bang, bang, bang could change tomorrow and it would likely equal X result as a return on profit.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Don't make it complicated. Don't overthink it. Get it done.
Totally agree.
My words of wisdom. Alrighty, what do we got coming up next in our next episode, Trudi?
We're going to have a look at the customer journey. So a little bit of a flow on of if you're inefficient, then you probably don't have a great customer journey either. So we'll have a little bit of a chat about why that's so important.
Awesome. Until next week, guys. Actually, our new schedule will be every 2 weeks. being that it allows us to get better content out for you as well and push our season out a little bit longer, keep you all intrigued. It's a lot of work, as I'm sure you're aware, putting together a podcast, and we love doing it, but we just needed to give ourselves a little bit more time in between running our own busy businesses at the same time. Cool. We will see you in 2 weeks, guys. If you can leave us a review, we'd appreciate it as well. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.